round table filled with gentlemen well-versed in various matters. So asanteni sana for your time. Dr. Brian Mutie is joining us, an advocate and governance expert. Asante, I hope you had a fantastic week.
Absolutely. Can't complain at all.
Karibu sana. Equally joined by Professor Fred Ogola, who's a governance expert. Asante sana for your time. And equally, market strategy, that's his forte. Hope you had a great week.
Not at the end.
Oh, I
understand obvious
why.
reasons.
Yes, and we'll get to talk about that. But thank you so much for your time. Equally joined by Dismas Mukua, the Duke of Mosocho, political risk analyst. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
It's good to see you.
Same here.
All right, gentlemen, so let's start with why Professor's end of the week was not so good, as some parts of the country happened to experience 12 hours of blackout. After that nationwide blackout started on Friday, the countrywide blackout led to disruption of businesses amounting to millions of shillings. Quite unfortunate right there. And it wasn't just businesses that were affected. Critical infrastructure, talk of hospitals, were equally in the dark rather, and the impact could have been fatal. We just want to start with listening to what the CS in charge for energy and the CS in charge for transport had to say in reaction to the power blackout. Listen in.
Yesterday at about 9:45 in the evening, we lost one generator, Lake Turkana wind generation, which you know is 310 megawatts. It was a sudden loss, a sudden drop, and that caused an overload in the system. The system felt an overload, and we had a cascade switch off, which happened pretty fast, and the whole country was in darkness within a few minutes.
The incident, though regrettable, did not pose any danger to our incoming and outgoing flights and passengers, considering that the backup generator lighting the runway and control tower was seamlessly deployed when the blackout occurred. At no time did we have an iota of darkness on the runway or the tower. I do not believe in the culture of barking and shouting at people. Where things can be done in an orderly manner, it's possible to do so. It's possible to make changes in a more cultured manner. So I want to thank you, Fred, and Alex, for the sacrifice you're making to our country. We are not judging you, we are not punishing you. We are just creating an opportunity for others to also try and see whether they can turn around the situation at the Kenya Airports Authority.
Well, needless to say, in an ideal scenario, such major infrastructure, the airport, hospitals, you name it, should have contingencies in place for such power outages. So the main question is, gentlemen, who exactly slept on the job? Was it a failure of oversight? Are we looking at a lapse in planning, or perhaps an indication of a much deeper rooted problem within the system? Mokua, your reaction to what we saw?
You know, when you sign a contract with Kenya Power, whether or not it's a postpaid or prepaid, there is an implied contract that they shall give you power on a 24-hour basis. And in the unlikely event that they don't have that capacity, they'll warn you way in advance. In more mature democracies, where people take responsibility, the power interruption warning is even given a year ahead. That in 2027, 10th of December, there's going to be power interruption. So people plan. And most of those critical facilities do not even need to have a standby generator, because they know that the power system is reliable. Because from a business perspective, having a standby generator is actually a cost. So you need to have the actual system running, then you need to have engineers and technicians maintaining, which becomes an additional cost. And I'm hoping that Kenya is not going to start degenerating to the way of South Africa or Nigeria, that when you have a business, one of the things you have to think always is plan B. So in my view, what the CS, the Cabinet Secretary responsible for energy, must do is to make heads roll within the energy sector, because the buck must stop somewhere. If you let it go, then the responsible parties will know these are best practice, that you can actually commit murder and walk away. There is no consequences for failure. And that is why the action by the CS Kipchumba Murkomen is very impressive. That the leader of any organization, say Kenya Airports Authority or Kenya Power, you are supposed to create systems to guarantee the customers the services they have paid for. So coming back and giving an explanation that we had a crisis at Lake Turkana, the consumer is not interested in those explanations. The consumer wants a reliable power supply. That is the bottom line.
So tell me this. The Transport Cabinet Secretary definitely sent heads rolling, structural changes at Kenya Airports Authority, which you definitely commend. But now, switching focus, how do you tell those people who are raising questions in terms of perhaps selective application of justice that KPLC wasn't held solely responsible? We didn't see heads rolling despite other agencies paying the price of KPLC's inconsistencies.
You see, for Mr. Kipchumba Murkomen, he said that he doesn't care what happened with KPLC, but under his docket, he expected that the standby power generators at Kenya Airports Authority would actually kick in because of this crisis. So at Kenya Airports Authority, where does the buck stop? The buck stops with the managing director. Because the managing director, you are supposed to ensure that your systems work. You are supposed to have all those contingencies, business continuity plans, and everything running to place. Because believe you me, these blackouts, it has really hurt Kenya's brand, a reputational crisis. Because all along Kenya has been shining that our peers, Nigeria and South Africa, are having this kind of power crisis. Now we have joined the group. And one hopes that this is a one-off event, which is the reason responsible persons must be held responsible by either going home or being fired. Because if you don't fire anybody, then people within, whether it's Kenya Power, Ketraco, whoever is responsible, they will know that last time it happened, nobody got fired. But, you know, human beings respond to two things, essentially. Pain and pleasure. So the guys who are responsible for this mistake, they must be inflicted with the highest level of pain.
Interesting. Prof. Ogola, as you come in, how can an international airport be affected? That was one of the major questions in the last 24 to 48 hours. And for the millions of businesses that were affected in terms of revenue collection and whatnot, who is solely responsible? Where does the buck end?
Yeah, first of all, let me put this thing into context. I was trying to analyze the economic implications of this because being an economist, naturally you look at the economic implication. And
yes.
First of all, JK receives 8.8 million passengers a year. They receive 380 million kgs of cargo. At the same time, they have 298,212 aircraft movements in a year. Now, just translating into a day, that means that actually 25,000 passengers could not manage to come to JK at that time or serve the way they're supposed to be served. 1.5 million of cargo could not be managed, and around 720 aircraft movements could not take place during that time. I'm just talking about JK only. If you analyze those in numbers, remembering that the Kenya Airports Authority contributes 5.1% to the Kenyan national GDP. If you look at our GDP, you can imagine that if that was at stake, and of course the impression you talk about, this is serious. So if you ask, whom does the buck stop with? There are different bucks here. And I like what my brother said, that there's a buck on KAA. An international airport of that standard, you cannot even be allowed to become international airport if you don't have backup energy. I sit in boards of hospitals where people said people lost lives in hospitals. I would disagree with some people from Azimio who said some people died in hospital, they need to be paid. No, I ran a hospital. In fact, you cannot even get the certificate, the license to continue if you rely on 100% grid. You cannot be. Because lives are sick, babies are in the nurseries and the rest. So let us, as a nation, distill the truth and give people accurate information. So as far as I'm concerned, the buck in the end will stop with the president. the mismanagement in Kenya Kwanza starts from, for example, when the president was elected and he begins appointments. The CS Transport, he appointed him. The CS Energy appointed him. Then those people went and appointed people inside the parastatal where they sit. For example, there are over 18 parastatals sitting under Murkomen. There are over 19 parastatals sitting under Chirichiri. They made those changes. If you look at even the names of the people there, you can even tell we talk about inclusivity. But for me, I'm not even concerned about the tribal inclusivity. I'm concerned about competent inclusivity. Because if you are lacking competence inside an organization, even if you bring people from all tribes of Kenya to work there, it will go down. We are looking about inclusivity competence that needs to come in Kenya Kwanza. If you look at the cabinet, tell me, if you are sitting in New York, you see Murkomen there, you see Kindiki there, you see Linturi there in agriculture, where you will take money. And you go compare to the one in Tanzania. So I'm trying to say the back stop with the president, the full back, but the different faces are there. Then I can tell you, on that day when there was power blackout, I was able to cut my hair in a kinyozi, which is based somewhere in Kawangware. I mean, I don't live very far from Kawangware. I went to cut my hair somewhere. Actually, I would call it, it's Dagoretti Corner. I went to Dagoretti Corner and cut my hair in a backup generator. A kinyozi, a simple restaurant where people are watching football when there was blackout. Seriously speaking, for me, I can tell you without a doubt that these guys need to tell us what they were doing in the airport that happened. There was something that was happening in the airport which is not supposed to be told us. So the truth of the matter, I can tell you, either they were smuggling something in the country. If I'm wrong, I'm going to put a demand letter because I stopped complaining to the MD of Kenya Airports Authority to give us right of explanation because the Constitution requires that you have a right to be given information. They have to explain to us which planes landed at that time. What were the plane manifest? So we have to bring all this so that Kenyans can get accurate information rather than what guesswork is going on. Whereas Zimio says babies died, I don't know who died. Let us be treated with respect. Transparency is key. So the buck stops with the president. He has a government. A government needs to govern as a unit. You could see disconnect where Murkomen said in the evening that tomorrow by 9 a.m. I'll make a decision. It came at noon. Of course, the president made a statement in Kakamega saying they are working on the Kenya power. And then Chirichiri says, you know, those means disconnection. Even Kenya Kwanza needs education on communication. They are not even running as a government. They're just people inside the government, but it's not running as a government. So the government, I could say, rudderless, clueless, and planless.
Despite the reaction.
We cannot be a reacting nation. In fact, anybody gets scared. And let me tell you shortly. Kenya has IBM, Google, big high-tech companies are coming to Kenya. 62% of Kenya GDP sits on the service sector, where even media is. That depends absolutely on good energy, reliable energy, secure and reliable cyberspace and internet. If you disrupt that thing, you make Kenya less competitive to other countries. And that's why we don't want comparison with Somalia. We cannot be compared with Somalia. We cannot be contrasted.
Wakili, as you come in, is there legal redress for those businesses that were affected? Who do they turn to in terms of perhaps recovering the money that was stolen?
Thank you so much, Jesse. First of all, at Article 28 of the Constitution, it stripes such kind of an outage strips Kenyans their dignity, and that's actually provided as part of the protections that are provided by the Constitution. That in the event such an example of a power outage happens, then Kenyans are left bare, exposed, and therefore stripped of their dignity, and therefore that's something that's actually insulated by the Constitution itself. When you look also at Article 43, it's a socio-economic right that Kenyans are given, and therefore that insulation also is provided by the legal framework, which we call the Grand Norm or the Constitution of Kenya. And therefore, when you look also at Article 46, it's about consumer protection. Me as a consumer protected by the Constitution itself, that in the event that I have a social contract through the Constitution of Kenya, then that Constitution binds me to be provided by the nation or by the country the services that I so deserve, and that includes energy, food, and also issues to do with the basic issues such as shelter. So going forward, there has been cases where consumers have, sued Kenya Power and also EPRA for that matter, and they have gotten some reprieves. And when you look at some of the precedences that have been set, is that awards have been given by people who have gone to court to seek redress as far as losses that have been incurred as far as power outage is concerned. And therefore, Kenyans can still pursue the same avenue. However, courts normally work under such a kind of circumstances that would provide an avenue where they give redress, but they cannot compensate every Kenyan. It has to be guided by what we call reasonableness, because over 50 million all going to court to seek redress on this kind of outage that has just happened may not, be well appreciated within the court justice system, and therefore it may, Kenya Power and EPRA may get away with it because of the nature of that kind of suit that has been actually tabled in a certain jurisdiction. But however, going forward, it's first of all, let me say as a layman now, as a Kenyan, not as a wakili or as an advocate, that first of all, it's unfortunate. And running a government, first of all, is not easy. And this is not the first time that we are having a blackout or brownout happening. It has happened before. However, this Kenya Kwanza government is operating in an atmosphere which, again, we all know it's a little bit acidic or saturated with a lot of politics, that any small mistake that happens, of course, is going to be judged very harshly by the likes of Ogola and the company. Just an example, my brother, don't take it offensively. Okay. So what I'm trying to say, we have seen blackouts before, and they happen everywhere. When you go to Abuja, which Mokua is calling our peers, whatever there's a power outage, the generators will sing in different choruses, one in alto, another in soprano, another one in bass, and that's one of the leading economies. Okay. South Africa, again, they have really failed to deviate from the dirty energy, which we call coal, which we call coal energy, which is dirty energy, which the world has always been running, cautioning against. Okay. Kenya as a country, we have made huge strides. And when you look at our power distribution as a country, per population, in terms of household connection with power, I can say that we as a country, we have really tried. And we have to appreciate as a country where we are coming from, because where we were before is not where we were today. And therefore, it is not always good to blast the government whenever things go wrong, as much as we are saying things have gone wrong. Of course, this kind of knee-jerk reaction, which Mokua likes referring to in terms of government reacting to issues, is an issue which is part and parcel of any government running. When you go to the US, there will always be blackouts, and they will always react in a certain way. But going forward, one question that begs myself actually is the issue of where we are as of today with the issue of nuclear power, because this is an issue that we have been discussing in, day out, and so on and so on, and nothing seems to be coming. And we have a nuclear board, actually in the name of NUPEA, which promised to come up with a robust framework and provision for energy, and they promised that the issue of brownouts and the blackouts will be a thing of past. But after today, since the establishment of NUPEA as a board, which was to provide us with the clean energy in the form of nuclear, which will actually address these issues of Kenya Power and their monopoly altogether. It has not happened. So to me, it's a sad story that we are still, circumventing around the issue of nuclear energy, which most of the countries have already adopted, and they are already, smarting and doing business and big things with that energy, because it's a clean energy. However, as a country, I must say that we can do better than what we are doing. When we see heads rolling in the name of sacking of the Gitari, the MD for KPL, KAA. First of all, it's a good action, because people sleeping over their jobs must be awoken by calls for it. But it didn't have to wait. In fact, in Japan, in such a situation where somebody has made such a huge mistake, where generators are not even working in the event that there's a huge brownout like that one, they don't wait to be sacked. They just, in fact, others go to commit suicide. So it's unfortunate that we are having a situation where you have to wait to resign. But again, if he had resigned, I think he would have set a very huge, integrity bar that would be very hard to, to topple by another person.
So away from the blame game, Dismas, because this is clearly an eye-opening moment in terms of focusing attention on strategies that will avert such power outages in critical infrastructure. Do the actions that have been taken so far give you assurance that the next time this happens, we won't be adversely affected as a nation?
Well, this is not the first time we've had a countrywide blackout in the recent past.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to introduce politics to this conversation, then probability of losing it is extremely high, because then you start looking at it as from an Azimio lens or a Kenya Kwanza lens, while in fact it's a management issue. So if a panelist decides to look at Kenya Power or JKIA or KA from a Kenya Kwanza lens or or an Azimio lens, then somebody's looking for political capital, you lose it, because it's a management issue. Does KA have an MD? Yes. Is it supposed to have systems to guarantee that in the event that there is a power outage, the generators work? Yes. Did the system work? No. Where does the buck stop? The buck stops with the MD. And has the MD been requested to look for opportunities elsewhere? Yes. And this is the very first time where a cabinet secretary, in fact, has requested an MD to take a walk for failure to ensure that systems work.
Okay.
In that event, then somebody needs to give Kipchumba Murkomen a pat on the back. And when during the statement he issued, he indicated a decision was going to be taken at 9 o'clock in the morning. He did not indicate when he was going to announce. So a decision maybe was taken 9 o'clock, it was made public at 1. So now when you start looking at those intricacies, it points to one fact, that you are not interested in addressing the critical issues as to why there was a lapse. And for me, going forward, I would hope that Mr. Murkomen doesn't stop at management changes.
Okay.
That in fact there is a special audit done to find out what exactly happened. You recall he mentioned some generators were installed, I think 2 years ago. They have not yet been commissioned.
Yeah.
So there must be a very special, elaborate audit to find out where does the buck stop? Because the MD is supposed to offer global leadership, but who is that technician? Who is that engineer who slept on the job? That is very critical. And the same should apply with Kenya Power, so that we know. Because there was a statement issued by Lake Turkana, and it was on social media, so I'm not sure whether it's accurate. They said, wait a minute, we are not responsible for this. Then now you begin to wonder, between Lake Turkana and Kenya Power, who is misleading Kenyans. So in my view, what maybe President Ruto needs to do is to establish a special audit on these two circumstances, because we don't want this thing to happen in future again. Right. We don't want it to be a regular occurrence. There are Kenyans are now say it's a normal occurrence. No, we don't want it to be normal. We want to be in the same level like South Korea, in the same level like Israel. Professor Gola has indicated that Kenya is going to become an ICT hub. So we want that when people are coming to do business in Kenya, they will know that a standby generator will in fact be standby.
Okay.
That is not something you're going to rely on for hours on end. And in my view, for us to make progress, let's look at the critical management aspects. Because the moment you introduce politics, then we'll forget about the germane issue and start throwing stones for no reason.
Well, I don't know if we should shift to politics. So, Gola,
just last comment.
Just briefly, yeah.
Mine is, let me tell you, I did analysis on funds. Nigeria is a very big population. Ghana, those are very big population countries, if you like. And we look at the what called innovation indicator. The innovation indicator for Kenya is much higher than Nigeria, Ghana, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Uganda. And we try to ask, what is the main thing driving the innovation indicator? And there are two things. One is stable Kenya Power. And then two was the broadband technology which Kibaki launched. And I would like to urge the Kenya Kwanza government, if I was president, I could have done analysis and found which are the nascent sectors that can actually take this economy to the next level. And find how can they be supported with reliable, let's say, energy, reliable internet, but also safe cyberspace, Because remember last time, and he's telling us not to talk about the president. Look, Shakahola reaction, isn't it? We saw the cyber attack in Kenya. That was a reaction again. That one we are still holding. Now we are moved now to disruption of internet, of electricity. You saw comments coming from Kenya Power. Oh, we get power from Uganda. Oh, it is, look. There's no truth here. That's why me and trying to say we have to put a demand letter so that we can have the truth being declared. If they don't give the truth, the court should demand that they give us the truth, because the Constitution requires that. And for me, this should not be politicized. This matter is a matter of national security. Because I saw some comment on Twitter, people saying, I'll go work on it if Kenya Power. You know, people start moving for if Kenya Power, if. We cannot have an if economy. We must have an economy which is assured. In fact, the stability in the economic shows that there are some fundamentals that any investor, any business person trying to do knows work. For example, kids will start saying, I'll fish assignment if Kenya Power behaves. I'll do for you that work if Kenya Power does. I was talking to some of my contacts, they're telling me, Fred, I can submit that thing guaranteed on Monday if. You see, the if economy is the reason why Somalia remains an if economy, a country like Sudan remains if economy. Kenya is now a middle income economy. We cannot be taken back to a third world economy which operates under if economy. We are beyond that.
Okay, gentlemen, and I know we've spoken about not putting politics into matters power, but let's speak about politics, because President Ruto...
Now power politics.
Yes, now power politics. Interesting play of words there. President Ruto is currently on a 5-day visit